A drone that costs tens of thousands of dollars is flying towards something that we would really rather not watch get blown up. So we fire an interceptor at it that costs hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars to take it out, and everybody on the internet loses their minds. The people freaking out about spending millions of dollars to shoot down a $50,000 drone with the computing power of a TI-83 calculator aren't entirely wrong. But this is not a simple equation, and we need more than a fancy calculator to arrive at an answer. So today, we're going to do something that typically goes over great on the internet and talk about a topic loaded with tons of nuance to the point that there really is no right or wrong answer. By discussing how this threat evolved, why shooting things down is hard, and what we are doing about it, our hope is that whether you agree or disagree with shooting expensive missiles at stuff, you at least have a better understanding of why we do it. First, let's set the stage and keep things as simple as we can here. For this video today, we are just going to focus on the cheaper one-way attack drones like the Shahed 131s and 136s, and to some extent those cheaper ballistic missiles like the Iranian Fateh 110, which starts at about $100,000 because that is what we are shooting these expensive interceptors at right now. While FPV drones and quadcopters are definitely a very real threat, they don't usually have the range to reach things like our ships or our bases from which these expensive interceptors are usually being launched. Smaller, more commercial style drones are a whole other problem that we definitely need to talk about, but that's best for another day. Recently, US forces and partner nations in the Middle East have been contending with a mixed bag of one-way attack drones and cheap missiles launched from Iran and from their proxies across Iraq, Yemen, Syria, and Lebanon. These threats are so prevalent today, it's kind of easy to forget that they didn't really exist just a decade ago, at least not in their present form, and certainly not in their present scale. Ballistic missiles have been a part of warfare since the Nazis were lobbing V2s at Britain during World War II. But until recently, they've been relatively expensive and used in small numbers by nation states only. Drones have also been around a lot longer than many may realize. During World War II, the US even had Operation Aphrodite, which took older and worn out B-17 bombers and loaded them with explosives to remotely fly them into, ironically enough, V-1, V-2, and even V-3 launch sites. While that was ultimately a failure, it really was a sign of things to come. These days, ballistic missiles are becoming cheaper and simple enough that even non-state groups have them, and the B-17s have shrunk down to fit into the bed of a truck and cost less than the truck that they're fitting in. These weapons are also just as capable as many weapons that we might have considered advanced just 20 or 30 years ago. With that brief little bit of history, we may look back and think that we really should have seen this coming, but the argument can be made that until Ukraine, nobody had really seen cheap drones and missiles being paired up to overwhelm air defenses over long periods of time. Even when Iran launched strikes against Israel before the current fighting, they were limited to hundreds over a handful of days. Now in Ukraine, Russia can fire hundreds of drones and missiles every single day, often for weeks at a time. The game has truly and significantly changed. I know that I can get caught up in this short-term way of thinking where weeks can feel like months and months just seem like way too long, but when I step back and think about things kind of as a big picture and look at all these new threats that we've ever faced, or even old threats that have been used in a new way, I realize that it has often taken months or years for us to find suitable and effective countermeasures. Just look at the IEDs in Iraq. When those first hit the scene, we didn't really have any answers for them. Thin-skinned Humvees were getting ripped apart, and at one point, IEDs were 70% of US casualties in that war. Then came things like the MRAP, signal jammers like the Chameleon, and different tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs, that had to be created to counter them. And if we're being honest, we never actually totally defeated IEDs. We just kind of got to the point where the losses they created were more tolerable. And really, that's about the best that you can hope for in warfare. Losses will happen, and I'd argue that nobody actually wins a war. They just lose less than the other guy, or they're able to lose more than the other guy until they give up. Today, we are simply at another one of those inflection points where the new meta on the battlefield is causing big problems while we figure out how best to deal with them. The biggest reason, at least in just my opinion, of why we are shooting down cheap drones and missiles with things like the PAC-3 out of a Patriot at $4 million a pop is because intercepting flying things is really fucking hard. Hopefully we all understand that shooting down a ballistic missile with another missile is one of the more complex things that our military does. It's honestly impressive that we even make it look as easy as we do. An Iranian Fateh 110 ballistic missile is about 30 feet long and only about 2 feet in diameter, and it travels at about Mach 3.5. So we are trying to hit something that is 10 yards long and 2 feet around, going 2,600 miles an hour with another missile inside of a complex and chaotic environment. Now, it does help that they do typically follow a predictable flight path, but still. And drones are not an easy kill either. A Shahed 136 is only about 11 feet long with an 8-foot wingspan, and that's a relatively small target. They do fly slowly at about 115 miles an hour, and they can cruise lower than a ballistic missile, but flying low and slow doesn't necessarily make it any easier to shoot down. It can often even make detection and classification even harder. So we are using our exquisite systems and interceptors because that is what we have that can actually detect, identify, track, and ultimately shoot down these threats with a higher probability of getting a kill. And we need that high degree of probability because what these interceptors are protecting often make $4 million seem like a bargain. And that brings us to our next reason why we shoot down cheap shit with expensive shit. These fancy systems are often protecting things worth way more than whatever interceptor is being fired. We can just take a look at the Red Sea fight for some perspective. The Navy engaged in its heaviest combat since World War II here, shooting down waves of ballistic missiles and drones. We fired hundreds of high-end interceptors from warships, particularly Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, and aircraft even scored several air-to-air kills. An Arleigh Burke costs about $2.5 billion and often fires the SM-2 to shoot stuff down. The SM-2 costs a little over $2 million, so you'd have to fire about 1,250 SM-2s before that math flips. Now, obviously, a Shahed 136 or even an anti-ship ballistic missile is not really going to sink an Arleigh Burke destroyer, but a well-placed shot on the bridge could take it out of commission and force it back to port for repairs. And can you imagine the internet if an Arleigh Burke got hit by an Iranian missile or a drone? I mean, really, just imagine what that would be like.
There was a firefight!
And on land, the story is very much the same, especially at our air bases, except we don't have to imagine what it would be like if Iranian drones and missiles hit those targets, because they did. A lot. One of the more notable assets that was hit on the ground during the Iranian drone and missile attacks was an E-3 Sentry airborne warning and control system, or an AWACS. These run about $300 million each, but they may as well be priceless because we don't make them anymore, and we don't even have replacements coming anytime soon, because the Pentagon punted on the E-7 Wedgetail program and only recently realized the error of its ways and reversed course. We actually have an entire video on the E-7 program and the mistakes the Pentagon was making before it reversed course. I am pretty proud of that one. David absolutely nailed the script, and we were pretty early to it before a lot of people were talking about it. So yeah, I'm gonna say I'm proud of that one and I like what we did there, so go ahead and watch it for yourself. Iran also reportedly damaged 5 KC-135 refueling tankers on the ground in Saudi Arabia. These cost about $40 million each, and they are also another aircraft that we aren't making any more of. We do have the KC-46 Pegasus tankers, but those have a lot of problems, and losing even a handful of tankers during an air campaign can significantly degrade operations. So just based on the dollar cost of assets and equipment, a few $1 million to shoot down a very real threat can be a relative bargain, and we aren't even considering the human cost yet. Now, I wasn't really sure how best to approach this one because a human life is not something that we feel we can put a price tag on, and we really didn't want to come across as insensitive, But for the sake of this discussion, we do have to mention that service members are a significant monetary investment worth, in some cases, millions of dollars. And any amount of money to spare innocent civilians from our own failures as a species as we engage in warfare seems justified. The bottom line is that the math of firing $1 million to take out $50,000 makes a lot more sense when you consider what happens if you do not fire that interceptor. Now, an argument can be made that we don't have the magazine depth to keep up with that, and that is 100% true. We can't argue with that, and we have videos that go in depth on our missile magazine issues, but I think most commanders would rather have empty magazines and protected assets than a smoldering pile of rubble and lots of missiles left over. But I have to admit here that we've actually done a pretty poor job in this discussion so far, because while we have technically answered why we fire expensive missiles, we haven't really answered why we fire expensive missiles. What I mean by that is we still haven't addressed why other solutions don't really exist, at least not at this scale. That answer is a lot more complicated, but to start, other solutions do kind of exist. The Navy was using their 5-inch guns to shoot down drones in the Red Sea fight. We have APKWS-2 rockets that we've strapped to F-15s and F-16s to take out Shaheds. Hellfire missiles have been adapted for counter-UAS missions. The Army bought $500 million worth of Coyote drones to hunt other drones. The Grizzly system that we recently discussed uses the JAGM. Apaches and other platforms are getting fused 30mm rounds. And we also have an assortment of laser and directed energy weapons like microwaves at different stages of testing and deployment. So cheaper answers to this problem do exist. But as we said earlier, shooting things down is just really fucking hard. And we have to keep in mind that these threats didn't exist a few years ago, at least as they do now. This is where taking a step back and looking at this in several months or years is necessary. We don't have these systems ready to go now because we didn't need these systems until now. All right, pop quiz time. When did the Shahed 131, and that's the predecessor to the 136, make its combat debut? A, 2004, B, 2008, C, 2015, or D, 2019? And the answer is D. The 131, which gave way to the 136, was first used in combat in 2019, just 7 years ago, to attack Saudi Aramco oil facilities. This isn't some old weapon that Iran dusted off and made relevant for today. Other versions of Shaheds like the 129 more closely resembled the MQ-9 Reaper and other ISR assets, and we had those figured out. The 131 and follow-on versions were purpose-built for the kind of fight that Iran would find itself in, making them particularly difficult and well-suited for the environment. Show me what your defense is going to be, and I can more easily come up with an offense to get through it. That's pretty much always been the problem with defenses. When you're defending, you have to get it right every single time. When you're attacking, though, you really only have to get lucky once, especially if you're attacking the loss-averse United States, which may even have somewhat of an invincibility complex. Now, we can look at Ukraine and say, they figured it out, why can't we? But they still really haven't figured this out either, because it's a hard problem that almost always benefits the attacker. Russian drones like the Girin 1 and 2, which are just Shahed 131 and 136 clones, still get through. It is estimated that as much as 90% of Girins launched at Ukraine are intercepted, but all that really means is that if Russia launches 100, 10 will still get through. Now that is still really good, but Russia is compensating by increasing the volume, using decoys, and changing up its tactics. To help put things into perspective, on May 24th of this year, Russia launched an estimated 600 Girin 1 and 2 drones at Ukraine. The volume of drones and missiles that Russia is using just to get through Ukrainian defenses is mind-boggling. As countermeasures to the drones evolve, so do the drones themselves. Shaheds and their clones are leveling up in big ways with more powerful motors, AI-enabled chips for terminal guidance, and other tweaks that make intercepting even more difficult. This is becoming somewhat of a theme in a lot of the videos that we do, especially with things like armor, where people say, oh, drones make armor obsolete. Drones don't make things like these obsolete. They just make it necessary to further evolve. But as we evolve our defenses and our countermeasures, they also evolve their offensive capabilities, like they're doing with the Shaheeds and AI chips and motors and decoys and things like that. So this is just one more of the same thing where on and on we go in this endless cycle of destruction with no end in sight. So why do we shoot down cheap shit with expensive shit? Because it is hard to shoot things down. Our only other choice is to let them through and potentially take out even more expensive things. And the threat is relatively new, so we don't have mature countermeasures ready yet. We are working on cheaper solutions, and we covered some of them like the Coyote and the Grizzly in other videos, but creating new counters to new threats can take time, months, or years. Is shooting expensive missiles at cheap things good math? Absolutely not. But at least for right now, it's the least bad math we have. So go ahead and rip me apart in the comments, because this is more of an open-ended video where we're kind of sharing our, not really opinions, but what we've observed and what we pay attention to. And that leaves a lot of room for criticism, which is perfectly fine. So go ahead and hit us up in the comments. And if you need to call me an idiot or something, I don't really care. It's just the internet. It's really not that serious. But leave your comments down below. We appreciate that. Go ahead and like, subscribe, do all those things that help us with the channel and show support. We do really appreciate it. And now it's channel update time. I wrote this script and Savvy edited the video. There's not a whole lot to cover. We have a store.taskandpurpose.com. It's pretty sweaty in here. I don't know. Soaks up sweat like a champ. So go ahead and get yourself some merch. Actually watched is a code. It gets you 10% off. That's all I'm going to say today. Corrections, kyle.gunn@taskandpurpose.com with corrections in the subject line. If I made a mistake, if I mispronounced a word, I'm going to do that a lot. I'm not going to entertain 5,000 emails a month on mispronounced words, because my inbox is a disaster and I just don't have the time, the energy. I just don't have it. It's just not there. So go ahead and hit me up with corrections there. And also, if you just need to say, hey, reach out and you got stuff going on, or you just want to unload stuff with a relative stranger on the internet, I will keep all that to myself and I'll email you back if you got something going on that you need help with. So thank you so much for being here today. I'm Kyle, your friendly ginger. You are all dismissed, and I will see you all next time.